There are moments when the whole world seems to push you to go out, to rush, to show yourself, but the place where you truly find yourself, where your mind and soul finally breathes in the silence of your own home, in the calm that no one else sees and that only you can inhabit. Have you ever felt a profound peace at the exact moment everyone expects you to be out living life? Have you ever sensed that the silence of your home understands you better than any loud conversation could? And is it escape or courage? That intimate desire to simply remain wherever you go, carrying yourself with you. This quiet warning resonates most when we are alone within four walls, staring at the ceiling and sensing, inexplicably, that we are finally home. Yet why does the world insist on interpreting this as weakness, as if home were merely an interlude between life's main acts, when, in truth, it is where the real rehearsals unfold? This piece is not about loneliness, it is about reunion, about the nearly secret psychology of those who feel alive not amidst the crowd, but in the gentle whisper of the kettle, in the warm glow of the bedside lamp, in the subtle dance of sunlight-lit dust. It is about people who have learned to find depth in the ordinary, to breathe without asking for permission. Here, stillness is not judged, it is revered. Perhaps, and only perhaps, those who love staying home are not fleeing the world, they are crafting a space where life can be lived with more truth. So stay, not as a passive observer, but as someone who truly recognizes themselves. Have you noticed how the world seems to constantly shout, how everything outside demands urgency, response, presence, performance? But what if I told you there is a type of silence that is not absence, but full presence? A silence that does not suffocate but embraces. A silence that heals. Some people do not merely tolerate solitude, they crave it, and not out of escape or isolation, but as a vital necessity. They do not love home because they fear the world. They love it because it is there, in the quiet corners of their living space, that the world makes sense. And sometimes, that is all we need. Meaning, the distant tick of a clock, the gentle hum of the refrigerator, and the certainty that finally, no one expects you to be more than you are. That silence has its own texture. It is not emptiness. It is dense, carrying memories, pauses, deep breaths. It is a space where time slows, and the body can rest without the weight of 1,000 invisible gazes. It is in that kind of silence that you hear what you truly think, where the constant noise outside tries to tell you who to be, but at home in silence that voice dissolves and what remains is something almost forgotten. Your own essence. Some people look at those who prefer to stay home and say, they lack courage. Ironically, perhaps it is the person who cannot stay that truly lacks bravery, because facing oneself without distractions is one of the most courageous acts possible. Carl Jung wrote, "He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens," and it is within the silence of the home that this awakening occurs. In antiquity, monks and sages would retreat to caves or temples. Today, many do so within four walls, surrounded by books, plants, soft light, and the comforting aroma of coffee. But the impulse is the same: quiet the world to hear what lies within. This is not laziness, it is spiritual practice. It is a way of declaring, my worth is not determined by the noise I make in the world, but by the peace I cultivate when no one is watching. Psychology refers to this as a low-threat environment. At home, with defenses lowered, cortisol, the hormone that keeps us alert, finally begins to drop, and the body understands. Here, I can relax, cry, laugh alone, without judgment. Simply be. That silence is not just biological, it is symbolic. Like the pause between two musical notes, it is a space revealing what the melody alone cannot express. Home transforms into a mirror where we see ourselves without makeup, without filters, without others' expectations, just us. It is curious how solitude frightens so many, perhaps because deep down we know it exposes what we have avoided, our anxieties, fears, but also our subtle strengths, those that do not shine on stage but hold the soul when the lights go out. Simon Weil said that pure, selfless attention is a rare form of generosity, and perhaps that is what home gives us. Attention without expectation. It asks nothing of us. It simply exists, like an old friend greeting you in pajamas, offering silence as company. In that silence, small gestures become sacred: the whistle of the kettle before tea, a blanket wrapping around you, a book left open on the couch. The music plays softly, reminding us that beauty still exists in the world. These are not luxuries, they are rituals. Psychic anchors telling us day after day, you have a place in the world where you are loved, even when doing nothing. Home is where masks fall, where the soul breathes, and where life slows just enough for us to feel it, not as a spectacle, but as a whisper, and in that whisper resides healing. Because, ultimately, perhaps all we need is that, a safe space where pain can rest and the heart can finally beat to its own rhythm. Now, tell me, when was the last time you truly heard your own silence? Before moving forward, did you know there is something more dangerous than failure? Silent stagnation. That feeling of always being busy yet never at peace, constantly searching yet without clarity about where you are headed. This happens because many people attempt to change the external world without rebuilding the mental foundation that supports it all. There is a little-known process that teaches exactly that: how to align thoughts, decisions and behavior with a clear purpose and a steadier mind. This method draws from Stoic philosophy and behavioral science, helping ordinary people step out of mental chaos and construct routines grounded in presence, autonomy, and direction. We recorded a video explaining this step by step and published it on our website. You can access it now by scanning the QR code or clicking the link in the description or the pinned first comment. There is a subtle, almost imperceptible moment that happens when the door of your home closes behind you. It is not merely the sound of the lock, it is the sound of something deeper, something symbolic. It is the sound of the mask falling at the end of the day. Greetings, moderated opinions, meticulously calculated smiles. We were versions of ourselves. The professional, the sociable friend, the understanding partner, the dutiful child, the man who silently endures everything, the woman who always appears fine. And all of that is exhausting for those who love home. It is more than a refuge. It is the only place where there is no stage, where another's gaze demands no adjustment, where mirrors no longer judge but simply reflect. And to reflect in that sense is more than to sit, is to look, to see oneself fully, uncut, without artificial light. Nietzsche said that becoming who one is requires a long struggle. Perhaps that struggle begins when we stop trying to be pleasing and allow ourselves to be who we are when no one is watching, when we are home alone, with no audience. And it is in that apparent void that identity begins to reveal itself in its rawest, most honest, and often most confusing form. At first, it is frightening. When the mask falls, you do not only find freedom, you encounter doubts. Who am I without the expectations that shape me? Who am I when I am not useful, entertaining, strong, interesting, or productive? And the most disconcerting part, I still like myself even when no one is validating me. Yet it is in that discomfort that gold resides. Home transforms into a laboratory for the self. Introspection becomes a mirror, solitude becomes a lens. Gradually, what once seemed discomfort becomes revelation. You start realizing that your worth is not measured by how many friends you have or how many tasks you completed today. It lies in something subtler, something internal, something immeasurable but palpable. Psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott said that true emotional freedom begins when we can be alone without feeling abandoned, and this only happens when, instead of fleeing our own company, we learn to inhabit it. Home is the stage for this learning. It is where we discover that silence is not emptiness, is space. Space to listen to what is inside. It is curious how people confuse those who love staying home with someone who dislikes others, as if the love of solitude were synonymous with but those who love their home often love so deeply that they cannot tolerate shallow relationships, because they know the value of true presence, not mere occupancy, but the sharing of time, the capacity to remain silently by your side without making you feel alone. Far from social noise, there is no need to edit oneself, no need to choose the perfect words or worry about being misinterpreted. The mind relaxes, the body unwinds, the breath changes. It feels as if, for the first time all day, we are truly living, not merely functioning. In that internal space, free from constraints, creativity blossoms, imagination speaks, intuition whispers, ideas emerge, wounds begin to heal, not because the world outside is bad, but because it is too noisy to hear what truly matters. And sometimes, all the soul needs is a bit of silence and permission. Permission to not have to be incredible all the time, to sit on the living room floor with a cup of tea and do nothing. Without guilt, to laugh alone watching a silly video, to cry without explaining why, to simply exist at the pace of your own heart. And it is then that the mask not only falls, it loses its meaning. After discovering the peace of being authentic, the effort of performance becomes unbearable. You begin to choose more sincere relationships, slower conversations, more meaningful silences. And when you return to the world, you come back whole, lighter, truer. Perhaps this is why some of us love home so deeply, not because it shields us from the world, but because it returns us to ourselves. And that, as simple as it seems, is one of the most revolutionary acts a person can experience. There is a silent beauty in small things. The way sunlight enters the window at the same angle each morning. The spoon stirring coffee, the familiar sound of footsteps in the hallway. Gestures almost invisible to the world, but profoundly visible to those who live them internally. Those who love being at home understand this secret. Routine, far from prison, can be a temple. In a world that celebrates the extraordinary, there is a type of soul that finds meaning in the ordinary. Perhaps that is the true power of routines. They do not chain us, they keep us alive. Psychology explains it clearly. Predictability equals safety for the brain. In familiar environments, stress levels drop, the nervous system relaxes, the mind calms. And when the mind calms, the soul can express itself. For many, home becomes a sacred space, not because of the objects it contains, but because of the rituals it preserves. Lighting a candle each night, watering the plants with care, folding the sofa blanket the same way, cooking the same Sunday dish. These simple routines are like unspoken prayers, quiet pleas for peace in a collapsing world. Deep down, all of this reminds us that life, despite its uncertainty, can have a rhythm that sustains us. Perhaps that is why those who love their home also have a different relationship with time. They do not live rushing, they live feeling, because in that space, time is not the enemy, it is the raw material of presence. Teachings from Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese monk, suggest that washing dishes can be a meditative act if done with attention, presence, and gratitude. This philosophy transforms the home into an invisible monastery, where every gesture is an opportunity to return to oneself. While the outside world rushes, sacredness reveals itself in the details. It is a refuge where the noise of the outside world cannot invade, because inside there is a softer, more delicate, more essential music hand. Those who learn to listen to it no longer long for applause, but careful. This reverence for routine is not rigidity. It is presence, awareness that everything can become more meaningful when performed with soul. The coffee is not just coffee, it is the moment the day begins. The folded towel is not just order, it is care for one's inner space. Each repetition whispers to the body, are you sure? Are you here? Are you alive? This perspective may seem naive to some, but perhaps the greater naivety is living in haste, expecting life only in grand events. Because in the end, real life is not in parties or photographs, it is in routine. And only those who have learned to love routine have truly learned to live. There is a story I like to recall. Once a wise elder was asked how he faced difficult days. He replied, I make tea the same way as on good days. That answer holds millennia of wisdom. Emotional stability emerges from the small commitments we make to ourselves. For some, home is like an external body. Each room represents an inner state. The kitchen is creation. The bedroom is refuge. The living room is contemplation. The bathroom is purification. And the ritual of caring for these spaces is a form of caring for the soul. Making the bed, arranging cushions, cleaning the floor. These actions are not chores, they are declarations. They say I care for myself even when no one is watching. And this kind of silent care is revolutionary. In a world where everything must be shared, those who love home learn to live without an audience. These sacred routines are often the glue that keeps us intact. When everything seems out of control, knowing where the cups are, repeating the same tea ritual, listening to the same music, these anchor us. It is our way of saying, the world may be collapsing, but I still have my rhythm. And perhaps in the end, all we need is that. A place where days are not all different, but somehow all our own. Spaces where no one else will ever enter except you, secret chambers of the soul where memories whisper, thoughts mature, and feelings organize themselves like books in invisible moments. This is the interior world. You cannot access it with GPS or likes, only with silence and courage. Those who love staying home usually possess this kind of courage. It is not the loud bravery of war heroes or the performative daring of social media. It is a quieter courage. The courage to sit with oneself without distractions, to look inward without fear of what may be found. Nietzsche said that the man who does not take time to look within himself will never understand the world. Perhaps this is the greatest gift of solitude, the opportunity to become intimate with oneself. While many flee from the mirror of their own mind, those who choose solitude delve deeper and discover landscapes that the external world could never offer. It is in that inner world that creativity is born, not as a spark, but as a slow-burning fire. In a culture that rewards haste, there is a subversive beauty in those who prefer observation over reaction, reflection over reflex, silence over competition. Do not be deceived. The silence protecting this world is not empty, it is fertile. In it, questions emerge. Why do I feel what I feel? What do I truly want? And why? Where does this nostalgia that appears at dusk come from? People who love being home live with these questions, and that is why they live more awake. Contrary to popular belief, home does not isolate, it expands. It does not limit, it deepens. Stepping away from noise is the first step to hearing the sound of one's own existence. A sound that is not pleasing to everyone, but for those who hear it, it is true music. Psychologists and neuroscientists note something fascinating. People who cultivate time alone often develop higher levels of creativity, empathy, and emotional awareness, not because they are special, but because they have created internal space for something genuine to blossom. And it does blossom: new ideas, insights, emotional healing. It is in that apparent nothingness that everything happens. In the interval between one distraction and another, the essential arises, like a thought appearing in the shower or a forgotten memory emerging while staring at a wall as tea cools. The interior world is always speaking. We only need to stop shouting to hear it. And in this listening, something even more powerful happens: the reconstruction of identity. Those who spend much time with others often become their reflections without intending to. But those who spend time alone begin to remember who they truly are, and that changes everything: the way they love, choose, and live. Philosopher Kierkegaard wrote that the door to happiness opens inward. Home is that door, and the interior world is the space that only opens to those patient enough to knock slowly. But beware, diving inward is not always pleasant. Sometimes it hurts. Silence can expose poorly healed wounds. It can confront us with guilt, fear, trauma, or emptiness. Yet curiously, it is in that confrontation that freedom begins. Because freedom is not fleeing from what hurts, it is learning to face it with compassion. Those who love staying home learn to embrace what the world has no time to hear. The fear nobody noticed, the anxiety hidden behind a smile, the grief that could not fit into a schedule, the pain that seemed too small to speak aloud. All of that finally finds space in the interior world, the only place where nothing needs to hide. And the most beautiful part is that this inner world eventually overflows. Calm cultivated in silence becomes presence in encounters. Empathy nurtured through introspection turns into deep listening. Wisdom born from pain transforms into generosity. Unknowingly, those who have learned to inhabit themselves become a refuge for others. Yes, it is possible to be at home and still be available to the world, not out of obligation, but by choice, because those who built a solid inner world do not depend on the outside to sustain themselves. These individuals do not speak louder. They speak with more truth. They do not seek attention. They notice, and perhaps that is the greatest gift of choosing solitude. The ability to see beauty in what the rest of the world has yet to learn to notice. Maybe loving to stay home is not a sign of escape, but of presence with oneself, with silence, with what is real. While the world shouts for attention, some choose to listen to their own heart. And in the end, perhaps that is the bravest way to live, unhurried, without performance, simply being. Because sometimes, returning home is the most beautiful way to return to oneself. I had to write this script at night. The house was silent, the light low, and a strange wind was hitting the window. The kind of wind that seems to carry forgotten memories with it. It was in that atmosphere that I remembered an old, almost silly scene, but one that marked me. I must have been 8 years old, and while the whole house wanted to go out more parties, I hid behind the living room curtain. I stayed there, feeling the sunlight pass through the fabric and land on my face. I wanted no toys, no company, just that moment. Back then, people called me strange. Now I understand. That was when I was meeting my inner world, and it was telling me something that only now I've learned to hear clearly. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you not only for watching, but for feeling. Because this video was not made to teach you anything. It was made to remind you of your essence. To remind you that your way of existing in the world, even if it seems different, could be exactly what the world most needs now. Individuals who are whole, calm, and deep. And if this touched you in some way, if somewhere deep down you thought, it's true, that's me, then you already know what to do, right? Oh, and before you leave, click the link in the description or the first pinned comment to understand how this process works. A process that has helped thousands of people step out of autopilot and build a life more aligned with their values and the person they truly want to be. Leave your like as if lighting a candle on an altar. Comment as if whispering in a confessional. And subscribe, because honestly, escaping the noise is easy. The hard part is finding a channel that respects silence as a form of wisdom. Those videos next to this one, I won't tell you what they are about, but I can guarantee one thing. They are not what you expect, and sometimes it is exactly what we do not expect that finds us at the right moment. So go slowly but go deeply. And when the world outside becomes too loud, you know, this house here, or the one that lives within you, will always be waiting, because home is not just a place. It is a sanctuary, a container for self-discovery, a vessel where authenticity is nurtured. It is where the quiet breathes, where thought and feeling can unfold without the constant interruption of the outside. The house is a stage, but not the kind with an audience. It is a stage for inner performance, or private growth, where the script is written by yourself and the applause comes from being true. It is where you can fall apart and put yourself back together, where masks are unnecessary and pretense has no place. In this space, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. The creak of floorboards, the sunlight on a table, the faint hum of the refrigerator. These moments, invisible to the world, are everything for the one who lives them internally. They are the music, the poetry, the art of life that nobody applauds but everything whispers. And here, in these silent rhythms, home transforms into a laboratory of selfhood. Solitude becomes a lens, introspection a mirror. Slowly, discomfort turns into revelation. You begin to understand that your value is not measured by the number of friends you have or the tasks you accomplish today. It is something subtler, more internal, something that cannot be measured, but can be felt. Psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott said that true emotional freedom begins when we can be alone without feeling abandoned. And that only happens when, instead of fleeing from our own company, we learn to inhabit it. Home is the stage of this learning. It is where we discover that silence is not emptiness, it is space. Space to hear what exists within. It is curious how people confuse those who love staying home with someone who dislikes others, as if loving solitude was synonymous with misanthropy. Yet those who cherish their home generally love so deeply that they cannot tolerate shallow relationships because they know the value of true presence. Not the presence that occupies space, but the one that shares time, that can sit in silence beside you without making you feel alone. At home, away from social noise. There is no need to edit ourselves. No need to choose the right words or calculate whether we are understood correctly. The mind relaxes, the body loosens, breathing shifts. It is as if for the first time in the day, we are truly living. not merely functioning. And it is in that unshackled inner place where creativity blooms, imagination takes voice, intuition whispers, ideas emerge, and wounds begin to heal, not because the outside world is bad, but because it is too noisy to hear what truly matters. Sometimes all the soul needs is a bit of silence and permission, the permission to not have to be amazing all the time, to sit on the living room floor with a cup of tea and do nothing without guilt, to laugh alone at a silly video, to cry without explaining why, to simply exist to the rhythm of your own heart. And then the mask not only falls, it loses meaning. Because after discovering the peace of authenticity, the effort to perform becomes unbearable. You begin choosing more genuine relationships, slower conversations, more meaningful silences. When you return to the world, you return more whole, lighter, truer. Perhaps that is why some of us love home so deeply, not because it protects us from the world, but because it returns us to ourselves. And that, simple as it may seem, is one of the most revolutionary acts someone can experience. There is silent beauty in small things. In the way light enters the window every morning at the same angle, in the repetition of a spoon stirring coffee, in the familiar sound of footsteps along the hall. These gestures are almost invisible to the world, but profoundly visible to the one who experiences them internally. Those who love being home understand this secret. Routine, far from being a prison, can be a temple. In a world that celebrates the extraordinary, there exists the type of soul that finds meaning in the ordinary. Perhaps that is the true power of routines. They do not chain us, they keep us alive. Psychology explains it clearly. Predictability for the brain is synonymous with safety. In familiar environments, stress levels drop, the nervous system disarms, the mind relaxes. And when the mind relaxes, the soul can express itself. For many, home becomes sacred not for the objects it contains, but for the rituals it preserves. Lighting a candle each night, watering plants carefully, folding the couch blanket the same way, cooking the same Sunday dish. These simple routines are unspoken prayers, supplications for peace in a collapsing world. Deep down, all of this reminds us that life, despite being uncertain, can have a rhythm that sustains us. Perhaps that is why those who love their home have a different relationship with time. They do not live running, they live feeling, because time is not an enemy, it is the raw material of presence. Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh said, "Washing dishes can be a meditative act if you truly wash dishes with attention, presence, and gratitude." This philosophy transforms the home into an invisible monastery, where every gesture is an opportunity to return to oneself. While the outside world hurries, the sacred reveals itself in the details. Home becomes a refuge where the noise of the world does not invade, because inside there is a quieter, subtler, more essential music, and those who learn to listen to that music no longer crave applause. Care is essential. Reverence for routine is not rigidity, it is presence. Awareness that everything becomes more meaningful when done with soul. Coffee is not just coffee. It is the moment the day begins. The folded towel is not just order, it is care for your inner space. Each repetition tells the body, are you sure? Are you here? Are you alive? Some may consider this naive, but perhaps greater naivety is living in constant rush, expecting life to happen only in grand events, because real life is not in parties or photos, it is in routine. And only those who have learned to love routine have truly learned to live. I like to remember a story. Once, a wise elder was asked how he faced difficult days. He replied, "I make tea the same way I do on good days." That answer holds ancient wisdom. Emotional stability arises from small commitments we make to ourselves. For some, home is like an external body. Each room represents an internal state. The kitchen is creation. The bedroom is refuge. The living room is contemplation. The bathroom is purification. Caring for these spaces is really caring for the soul. Making the bed, arranging cushions, cleaning the floor, these actions are declarations. I matter, even when no one sees. That kind of quiet care is revolutionary. In a world where everything must be shared, those who love home learn to live without an audience. These sacred routines are often the glue that keeps us whole. When everything seems out of control, knowing where the cups are, repeating the same tea, listening to the same music anchors us. It is our way of saying, the world may be falling apart, but I still have my rhythm. Perhaps in the end, all we need is a place where the days are not all different, but all somehow ours. There are places that no one will ever enter, except you. Secret corners of the soul where memories whisper, thoughts mature, and feelings organize themselves like books in invisible moments. That is the inner world. It cannot be accessed with GPS or likes, only with silence and courage. Those who love staying home often have that kind of courage. Not the loud bravery of war heroes, nor the performative boldness of social media, but a quieter courage, the courage to sit with oneself without distractions, to look inward without fear of what might be found. Nietzsche said that a man who does not take time to look within will never understand the world. Perhaps that is the greatest gift of solitude, the chance to become intimate with oneself. While many flee from the mirror of their own mind, those who choose to be alone deepen and discover landscapes that the external world could never offer. It is in this inner world where creativity is born, not as a spark, but as slow-burning fire. In a culture that prizes haste, there is subversive beauty in those who prefer to observe rather than react, reflect rather than respond, remain silent rather than compete. Do not be fooled. The silence that protects this world is not empty, it is fertile. In it grow questions. Why do I feel what I feel? What do I truly want, and why? Where does this nostalgia come from? Appearing at dusk. Those who love staying home live with these questions, and for that reason, they live more awake. Because contrary to what is often said, home does not isolate, it expands. It does not limit, it deepens. Stepping away from the noise is the first step to hearing the sound of your own existence. A sound not everyone will like, but for those who hear it, it is real music. Psychologists and neuroscientists point out something fascinating. People who cultivate time alone tend to develop higher levels of creativity, empathy, and emotional awareness, not because they are special, but because they created internal space for something real to flourish. And flourish, it does new ideas, intuitions, emotional healing. It is in this apparent nothingness that everything happens. It is in the intervals between distractions where the essential arises, like a thought appearing in the shower or a forgotten memory surfacing while staring at a wall as your tea cools. The inner world is always speaking. We only need to stop shouting to hear it. And in that listening, something even more powerful happens. The reconstruction of identity. Those who spend too much time with others begin unknowingly to mirror them. But those who spend time with themselves begin to remember who they truly are on. That changes everything. How they love, choose, and live. Philosopher Søren Kierkegaard wrote that the door to happiness opens inward. The home is that door, and the inner world is the space that opens only for those patient enough to knock slowly.